On the 1st of July 2026, Sony decided to do something it had never done in 30 years of the PlayStation's existence. It decided to kill off the one thing that built its entire gaming empire, the physical game disc. From January of 2028, no new PlayStation game will ever be published on a physical disc again. This didn't come up as too surprising to a lot of people, as last year, physical games just made up a meager 3% of PlayStation's revenue. PlayStation's official explanation for this was just two words: consumer preferences. They say that 4 out of 5 games are downloaded through digital channels anyway. But buried inside the same day's announcement is one small detail that almost everybody missed. It's something that tells you that this was never about consumer preference. But this was in fact one of the most profitable business decisions that PlayStation has made in decades. And it could potentially mean that your game libraries may not belong to you anymore in the future. Now, to understand why, let's start by going back to 1995. Sony walked into the console wars with the physical game disc as its hidden weapon. Nintendo's cartridges at that time were much more expensive, whereas the disc was much cheaper to manufacture. This single manufacturing advantage propelled the rise of the PlayStation empire as we know it today. But over the last 30 years, the same weapon turned around and pointed at Sony. And to see how, let's just follow the money. On each physical disc that comes out, a lot of players get the share of their pies before PlayStation does, which includes the retailers, the shipping firms that transport the disc, as well as the factories that manufacture the CDs. On top of that, unsold copies often come back at a loss. But here's the interesting part. The real problem for PlayStation doesn't even start until after the disc gets sold. Because the moment someone finishes their game, that disc becomes a competitor for PlayStation. You could sell it, you could lend it, and a used copy sitting on a shelf keeps undercutting a full-priced version of the game for years. Ironically, every disc they ever sell eventually starts working against them. And then came digital games. No factories, no trucks, no returns, and no used market dragging prices down. But just PlayStation's storefront taking its cut on every single transaction around the game. So by deleting physical game discs, Sony is not just getting rid of a small revenue stream. It is in fact removing the only competitor it could not win against, its own old products. But then the most important question is, if the economics were this obvious, why did they wait so long to do this, and why at this particular moment? And this is where it gets interesting. On 25th of June 2026, pre-orders opened for GTA 6. One of the most anticipated games in history with a development budget of over $2 billion. It is projected by analysts to be one of the biggest entertainment launches of all time. And then came the fine print. The physical edition of the game, in fact, has no disc inside. It is just a cardboard box with a one-time download code. And in fact, the $100 Ultimate Edition of the game doesn't even get a physical box. The internet erupted with disappointment, but a lot of people pre-ordered anyway. Some estimates suggested pre-order value of almost 260 million in the first week itself. One of the biggest game pre-orders ever recorded. And then, 6 days later, on 1st of July, when gamers were still annoyed at Rockstar, PlayStation published a quiet little blog and killed the physical game disc forever. PlayStation let the biggest game on its platform absorb all the outrage in the first week, but still saw about $250 million of pre-orders come in. And this was enough proof for them that anger would not stop their wallets. And then PlayStation just walked through the door that Rockstar had opened. Here's also the part that most coverage around this missed. PlayStation didn't just make this decision for itself, but in fact for the entire gaming industry. The entire supply chain that gets these physical games to consumers, the pressing plants, the transportation, and the retail shelf space, survives on one metric alone, and which is volume. And PlayStation is one of the biggest gaming platforms that drives those volume. The moment they exit, pressing discs becomes much more expensive for everyone still involved in the game. Fixed costs remain, with fewer discs manufactured to spread them over. And the industry is already moving forward on this. Xbox is testing a feature that converts your old physical discs into digital copies. Nintendo's new game key cards look like cartridges, but in fact don't actually contain the game. It just contains a key that triggers a download. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. How does this affect you if you already buy everything digital anyway? And this is where that small detail I had mentioned in the beginning comes in. In addition to announcing that the physical discs will not exist from 2028, PlayStation also announced that they are shutting down the PlayStation Store for PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita. Now, let's take a moment to absorb what this means. Once a digital store closes, if there are no physical alternatives available, any game that you didn't download becomes permanently out of reach for your console. When you own a physical disc, you decide how long your gaming library lives. But in a purely digital format, 3 new forms of control appeared, and PlayStation controls all of them. Games can get delisted from a store, servers can get switched off, and licenses can be revoked. But this is what I think. Getting rid of the physical disc isn't even the final destination. It is in fact step 1. Because once you can't resell or lend or truly own a game, why keep selling games to you at all? Let me rephrase that. Why take money from you once when they can take money from you every month forever. Netflix already proved that this model works. You don't own a single movie on Netflix, and nobody even remembers when that felt weird. The physical disc built Sony's PlayStation empire, but at the end, they decided that the empire was worth more without it. So I would like to know from you in the comments, what do you guys think? Is this the demise of game ownership, or is it just the market getting what it asked for? Because the pre-order numbers for GTA 6 tell a very different story than PlayStation's social media comment section. That's all for this video, folks. Until next time.